That's right. This is Let's Talk, listener call-in program. And this is Let's Talk, getting to the root causes of the important issues of the day. This on-the-air community forum believes your voice matters and welcomes all thoughts and views without judgment. Please join today's conversation by calling 415-663-8492 or 8317. And let's not do the tweets today. I don't know. Your hosts today, I'm Paul Raffel, and sitting across from me, Charles Schultz. And, you want to say something? Well.
How dare you silence me. Hi, Paul.
Shelley Rugg.
Howdy.
And Stephen Hurwitz.
Hello there.
Hello. And today, we're talking about money. Yes, money. Why did this come up? Well, there's always that constant struggle for money that we're all involved in. It's a ubiquitous source of stress and joy when you have it, and stress when you don't. Our society is built around it. But no, I saw an article called Economics is Quantum, and it raises the point that economics should be studied as like a quantum science, like quantum physics, because the money isn't there and then suddenly it's created. The way that things work now, really money is digital now. There is no real, most of our cash, apparently over half and maybe almost 2/3 of American cash is actually held overseas because people like to hang on to it because it's such a stable, in inverted commas, I just did that on the air, on radio.
It's really
quotation marks.
The United
Okay.
States when they keep it in their little closets.
Well, when they buy American debt too, but it's also used as a medium of exchange for buying in international trades. That's why lots of it is abroad.
Did you see those photographs of El Chapo's house where he had a mountain of $100 bills?
Was that his place in Inverness, or which one was that?
So he could roll around in it? Yeah.
He's going to build the wall, I think.
Yeah.
But money's, very emotional. People, we've gotten rid of a lot of our Victorian prohibitions around sex and whatever, gender, or this thing or that thing.
Oh, yeah?
Really, you'd have enjoyed the 1890s substantially less. Things actually have changed, but the prohibition around talking about money,
yes,
we don't seem to have made any progress around that.
How much do you earn, Stephen?
That's right.
Did you bring your tax? People, I'd rather not say.
Your tax returns? Did you bring with you?
Not as much as you think.
Why? I've never thought about it. How much money does Stephen make? But talking about money in those terms,
personal right off the bat.
It makes people very uncomfortable.
Yeah, right.
And interesting how uncomfortable it makes people. I found an article from the IJ that said that 1/3 of Marin residents are, quote, struggling financially, and that 41% of Marin families earn less than the low-income minimum, are considered low-income. And in Marin County.
Marin County low income.
Marin County low income, it does mean $105,000 or below for a family of 5. But, if you just take the median income for...
$5,000.
Yeah. Median income for men and women in Inverness or Point Reyes Station, you would find that the majority then here would also be below that low-income designation and would be nowhere near the $250,000 of household income that would be required to buy a house in Marin County,
right.
30-year mortgage, or even the $150,000 a year in income that would be required to purchase a condo, if you could find a condominium in West Marin, and maybe they exist, which is, the median there is $550,000, and they say you would need to make $150,000 collectively in order to achieve that. And when I look around, I see, all the workers, with the exception of business owners in some cases, aren't making anywhere near that, even collectively, right? Even so, you say it's a couple. You would have to collectively be making $125 an hour to be able to be at that minimum bar to buy a house in Marin County. And I don't really think that a lot of people are doing that. Certainly not the workers.
And rents, of course, are as expensive as some mortgages, right? More expensive.
That's right. Exactly.
$3,000, $3,300, $3,400 a month for a 2-bedroom house, that kind of thing.
I think it's considered normal.
People, yeah. People are living, more people are living check to check, and as I say, it's a great source of unease for most people, I think, now.
Including the wealthy.
Yes, you sent me
the
that.
wealthy?
You sent me that. Yeah, read something from that.
Rachel Sherman is a professor of sociology at the New School, and she wrote a book called Uneasy Street, The Anxieties of the Affluents. She did a study that of people with an income of $500,000 a year, and half of these people had more than $1 million income. And one of the things she discovered is that the privileged prefer not to think of themselves that way. Quote,
Do tell.
Quote, I feel like no matter what you have, somebody has about 100 times that.
Wow, that's rough.
Isn't that
for
something?
them.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
But this
isn't human nature. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter how much you have coming in. Human nature says somebody's got more than me.
Well, of course, it's true here in West Marin.
So they're suffering the pangs of
Suffering.
not being.
And they prefer not to call themselves affluent.
No, of course.
That's a no-no because they super rich when compare their situation with that of the ultra-rich. So they can actually feel sorry for themselves. How do you
I'm
like
not
that?
ultra rich yet.
Yeah, and they are often subjects of they express conflicted emotions about spending.
Oh, really?
Yeah, according to
Conflicted
her
emotions
study,
about
yeah.
spending.
Yeah.
Well, because of consumerism, it always rises with your amount of wealth. So people with very low income are maxed out and have huge amounts of debt. But as you move up, you find the same phenomenon. The income rises, but also the amount of debt rises, and the expenditures. Right? I mean, so very wealthy people have lots of houses and whatever, and maybe a huge amount of
And
debt.
hence
All that
lots
maintenance.
of responsibilities, lots of maintenance, keeping
Insurance.
people like me employed. Wonderful.
I'll just make one more observation that Miss Sherman says here. They were talking about affluent, and she says, the woman who takes the exception to the word affluent makes a point of placing herself at the, quote, very, very bottom of the 1%.
Oh,
At
boy.
the very, very bottom.
So what does that tell us? I mean, there's no kind of understanding of or no empathy
It's
for
relative.
people with less.
It's relative,
Yeah.
really.
Sure. Or a bit about self-deception, right? That somebody who's quite affluent can't even understand themselves.
And
as
what
quite
if
affluent?
Maybe
you were
they've been that way all their lives. They
course.
don't know any other
Yeah.
life.
Not necessarily. I was invited to a home several years ago for a 4th of July party in the Hamptons, and it was extravagant. And I was talking to the woman of the house, and she said, we were just like you. I mean, we were just kids. We had no money. So obviously her husband had tremendous good luck, or etc. And
well, it was a.
she said, we're just like you.
He's a moral person because the amount of money you have is also about what kind of a human being you are. Whether you're successful, whether you're a good person.
Well, that's certainly
The
something in our
richest
culture.
person in the world is the
Most virtuous,
is the
clearly.
most virtuous person in the world.
I did learn one thing, though. There is an extreme difference between good Scotch and ordinary Scotch.
Something I've discovered living in West
The
Marin.
bottles are very pretty, I'm sure.
So even a benefit for the non-Scotch drinker. You get to enjoy the bottle. Well, yeah, that's another thing that, if you're successful, it's a kind of virtue. And if you're not successful, you should be ashamed. People don't want to talk about their not having enough money for this or that, because that would be a source of shame, right? That there must be a bad person if they're not a success.
Or, there's a lot of people that are afraid of being that successful with money. And so it kind of keeps the money away. At least that's, a lot of people talk about the spiritual, flow of money flows in, it flows out. And that if we're not having enough, that we just need to change how we think about it.
Yeah, I think there's
There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that.
Because, I mean, it's been said that the sort of emotional center of capitalism, consumer capitalism we live in, isn't greed. It's not more. It's envy. It's what somebody else has. And that's what drives why you want that pair of shoes or that car or that whatever, is because you're observing the activities of other people and you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, as the expression once was.
Hence the bottom of the 1% lady who's feeling sorry for herself. And then there's Bitcoin.
Well, what about that?
School us on
are you
Bitcoin.
going to please
would you?
explain it to me?
I would love to be able to do that, but all I know is what I've been looking at this week, which is about Bitcoin and blockchain. Blockchain. Yes.
I haven't heard of that.
Blockchain is what is behind Bitcoin. It's a very safe method of accounting, basically, and it's a string of little digital blocks that contain all the information of a transaction, and so you can trace, for example, with Bitcoin, because there's only so many to go around. You can trace each Bitcoin's series of transactions throughout its life. And, I've been reading all the cryptocurrencies are an expensive joke, but here's an article, how blockchain could change the way you vote and pay taxes, because it's such a safe, encrypted technology, and there's no way to break into it. But if there's a mistake made in one of these blocks, it's there forever. You can't get into it at all, and it's just a history of transactions that goes on and on and on forever and ever and ever. The drawback to it is that apparently, because it's so data heavy, one little block of transactions takes power of like 9 households to run.
Nice.
Oh my goodness!
Right now, the mine, they call it Bitcoin mining. The Bitcoin mining procedure, I think it was Iceland. I think it uses as much energy as a country now. A small country, but a country nonetheless. Anyway, Bitcoin is cryptocurrency, a digital currency coupled with an online ledger called a blockchain. There you go. The blockchain records all transactions that have occurred since the inception of the Bitcoin system. It's set up so that every 10 minutes or so, a new page called a transaction block is added to the ledger. This new page refers to all past transaction requests by referring to the immediate previous block and records all the new transaction requests. To use a simple example, Mr. X uses Bitcoin to send a request to buy a pizza from Joe's Pizza. Joe's Pizza wants to make sure it's a valid transaction. That requires verifying that Mr. X holds enough Bitcoins to pay for the pizza and that he's not trying to double spend his Bitcoins. This verification is done by the accountants of the system, who are called the miners, and usually Joe's Pizza will wait for confirmation from several miners before agreeing to sell the pizza. Anybody can be a miner. You just need a computer. So it's distributed throughout the web somehow on a web of computers that are all part of it. It's so distributed that no one can hack into it or find the right information or get to your information.
There's a new version of this, by the way, that's come out, which is like it rewards you. It's an app. Which I don't have a smartphone. I think it's an app that's sort of based in England or something. I don't know how this works, but that rewards you, gives you little bits of cryptocurrency based on how much you walk. And with this in place, I am going to become a
wealthy man,
a billionaire. I have
Bitcoin billionaire.
I have Chacos coming in the mail this Friday, and I intend to overtake we have a number of billionaires in West Marin, but I think I can do it in about 18 months. So,
wow. And boy, you're going to look good too.
Why? Oh, well, gracious.
Not that you don't already. I don't want to offend you.
But I can't. You can't see me blush on the radio. 415-663-8492. Paul tried to take credit for the pants, but they are his pants. Interesting story there. Therein lies a tale. Are you so poor that you have to steal your neighbor's pants? And by the way, double meaning for people in the UK there, or a different meaning rather.
Yes,
so
let's not go into that one, so to speak.
Oh, well, just call in. Tell us how poor you are.
So what do you get when you exchange dollars or other currency for cryptocurrency? They are, in effect, no more than digital, decentralized, partially anonymous currencies not backed by any government or other legal entity and not redeemable for gold or other commodities. But, say the defenders, any paper or fiat currency, like dollars, are all created digitally via computer keystrokes and also have no intrinsic value since we've moved off the gold standard. The paper currency issued in the U.S., the dollar, proclaims on its face this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and that's all it says. It doesn't say backed by gold stored at Fort Knox. So, so thinking about Bitcoin, you start thinking about what does currency actually mean? What is money? Why, we all trust that in God we trust, I guess. That's why they put that on the...
Well, there's also deposits.
So the Bitcoin
deposit
people
insurance.
figure, well, if the Federal Reserve can just print money whenever they want, why can't we make money?
Yeah,
Is
well,
that-
they do, but they've limited the amount of Bitcoins that exist. So that raises its value. So right now it's just... I mean,
So that means it just enters the money into your account digitally?
yeah, but every
Yeah.
time you do any transaction in any currency, it's all digital
So then
now.
you just look in
There's
your
no-
account and it says you have that much money in it?
But you don't really.
So
Well,
Bitcoin...
you're that's not the way. It doesn't matter whether there's the money
Until
or
you
not.
want it.
Well, how do you take it though? You can spend it, but like I said, you're not going to take it as a commodity unless you're one of these guys that think the world's going to end.
Well, unless
tomorrow.
you want to buy a house for cash, I suppose.
Or an oligarch
Give
that
me-
wants to
give
transfer
me-
billions from Russia to
Give me
Kazakhstan.
$800,000 in cash. You walk into Wells Fargo around there and they'll say, "Oh, we haven't got it. Sorry."
So if you buy a Bitcoin, are you limited in how you can spend it? Only
Well,
Bitcoin receivers
Yeah.
will take your Bitcoin, or how does it work?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, you can certainly buy things online, and some
You have to be able to exchange it for
Some-
money that everybody else will take. I mean, a bank doesn't deal in bitcoins, but if you do want to buy something,
Well-
what if you want to buy a car?
right.
And your
there
dealer
are.
doesn't take bitcoins.
They are
You-
going to start. They're starting to trade bitcoins
Okay.
on the commodities market now. So
Oh wow!
yes.
Oh, the world famous Bunny Ranch brothel in Las Vegas is going to begin accepting Bitcoin.
There you
Oh,
go.
So
nice.
if you wanted to know how you could
There's
spend,
one thing you can get.
Thanks, Charles.
very welcome.
But yes, more businesses are starting to do that, especially online businesses. But if you're going to go in and pay with a card or out of your smartphone or whatever, what does it matter what currency you're using? I mean, why not bitcoins? I guess it's just the volatility.
I
of
wish
it,
someone
think,
would
is-
call in and tell us why not.
Yes, do call in.
663.
Bitcoin experts. We need expert advice here.
8492 663 8492. Give us a call. To me, it's who cares? Bitcoin. It smacks of there's going to be another financial crisis because you can buy a pedicure for your schnauzer with Bitcoin. It's
Charles, this is where it really comes down to. I'm sure you know that a guy wrote a book called The Broken Ladder: How Inequality Affects the Way We Think, Live, and Die. So. He says he tells it his own personal story, but he also says feeling poor, meanwhile, has consequences that go well beyond feeling. People who see themselves as poor make different decisions and generally worse ones.
I think that's right. I think people do get depressed if they feel as though they're down in the sort of pecking order. And that is the pecking order. Perversely, it's one that we don't want to discuss very much, right? So what we have is sentimental fictions that we live in. Somebody put up a sign here in town that said, "Love everybody." And I asked, and we add an apostrophe S and love everybody's sentimental fictions. And that's what it is, because it assumes that everybody's taking care of the money side of their life. And now we talk about art or spirituality or the call of the schmucks. I forget what it's
Can't we
called.
do both?
But that's your answer to everything. Can't we do everything? Why not? No, we can't.
Cannot a spiritual person also be poor?
But I said something more specific.
Isn't that part of
Not in West Marin, it isn't.
No, but-
no, it's a business here.
vows of poverty?
What I'm saying is that these are kind of social gatherings in which all assumptions about class and money are pushed away. And when you enter that space, those things aren't to be discussed, and you're there just to enjoy this particular moment, et cetera, et cetera.
But
I
you
think
can't discuss money with anybody.
That's true.
You can't
That's very
ask
true.
anybody what they earn or don't earn.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think it's
you
part
don't
of the
have
problem.
to be a certain financial level.
No, but what's pernicious about it is that the rich people who go into those spaces don't have to deal with that question of class. So this is what Pierre Bourdieu called the social flying, why the rich obsess about things like art, because it's going into that space where the questions about class or who has money, don't have money, those are all excluded. We don't have to talk about that stuff. So when I say it's sentimental, that's what I mean. It's like, we have a play date, we go out, nobody asks you, hey, I can't really afford to go, can I borrow some money, blah, blah. That would ruin the moment for everybody, because you would have been bringing in these ugly, low questions about money and how you survive into this activity which is supposed to be exalted and separate from all of those low questions. And I think you see a lot of it.
It's a funny thing, because the first question you ask if you're going for a job, or the first question that is asked of you if you are going to perform a service, is how much do you charge? And yet you can't ask someone, how much do you charge for your time as a stockbroker, as a landlord? How much do you charge for your time and effort as whatever you do? I can say, well, I charge $45 an hour, but that, right? And that's because everyone asks. Of course they ask but you don't ask the person who's paying you, well, can you afford me?
That's implicit, though. If a person says, "Oh, that's too much," that's really an expression that I can't afford you, or I won't afford you.
You won't afford. There are cheaper men around.
Well, I think what we've recreated is a kind of feudalism. I mean, those what's called neo-feudalism, incidentally, is when you look at all of those people who are the workers, the third of Marin County that is struggling financially, the 41% of families that are considered low income, they are never going to be able to own a home or sort of realize that kind of dream of home ownership or whatever it is. And so what's called rentier capitalism, the idea of an ownership class that is collecting rents constantly from everyone to allow them to continue to survive, has risen up. And so people have their cell phones, and they can, on a rental basis, participate in the lifestyles of the wealthy. So there's this huge rise in people of moderate or low wealth or income who want to have these elaborate destination weddings, or they benefit from cheap airfare to go to exotic locales. So they get on a rental basis to participate in something that the wealthy do, which is live in those locales, and they are whatever, do have those fabulous homes. It's not just one day where they go and have a wedding there. And everything seems to be kind of on this rental basis, and that seems to be very normal.
That's the credit system, right? Which is ubiquitous
Which
anyway.
is a whole nother story.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I think it's sort of part of it, though. I mean, that people are really insecure, and they can only now participate in that sort of buying the little bit of, what they call it, the experience economy now. I heard it on NPR. It must be
The
real.
experience economy.
But that you pay your little bit of money for a moment of the experience of someone of fabulous wealth.
Oh, yeah.
And more everything is kind of focused on it, whether it's focusing on the lifestyle of celebrities or billionaires, whatever, and then you can go to the resort maybe next door in Bora Bora. Maybe you didn't go to the one they went to.
But can't go to the private island.
Maybe it's the quality of the experience. Maybe they're not saying to themselves, oh, I want to live like the super wealthy live. They're just looking at it and say, that's going to be an incredible vacation. I don't think everybody compares himself on that level. I just want to say one other thing. I picked this up. There's a guy named Keith Payne who's a psychologist, and he started out not affluent, we'll use that word, and he says that he remembers the exact moment when he learned he was poor. And this is when he didn't have the money. The state paid for his lunch at school, and that there was a new person that asked him for money, and he realized he didn't have the money. And he realized that the other kids did. And here's what he says: that moment changed everything for me, he says. Although in strictly economic terms, nothing had changed. Payne's family had just as much or as little money as it did the day before. That afternoon in the cafeteria, he became aware which rung on the ladder he occupied. He grew embarrassed about his clothes, his way of talking, even his hair, which was cut at home with a bowl. Always a shy kid, I became almost completely silent at school.
And yet, what did he become?
He became a psychologist and wrote books, obviously.
Excellent.
Well, there's a generational gap here, too, which is that upward mobility thing. The country has gotten poorer. So, there's a function of nostalgia here, too, which is, people in the center of the country, and I was saying this to Paul Orfeld earlier, and he said, Charles, whatever you do, definitely repeat this on air. I didn't find it tedious the first time. I remember saying it clearly. We see Make America Great Again hats. We think this means nativism, nationalism, racism, sexism, bigotry. But in a way, in many cases, it may mean those things. But I think for a great number of people, maybe majority of people who had that sentiment resonates with them, they're thinking about a past like in the 1960s and 70s that was more prosperous, even the 80s, that was more prosperous in the present time. Now you come to a place like in the coastal areas of the United States where the wealthy and the elites live. There's also a huge nostalgia for previous times. And so there seems to be an emotional mood across the country, whether it's Trump voters or, something on the coast, something else, that has this sense that the earlier time was more prosperous, therefore more virtuous, therefore to be idealized.
Certainly more prosperous, yeah.
Yeah, that there's just more money.
Who was it? Somebody, I think it was Charlie Brooker was saying the 30-year-olds now, the millennials, are earning the same as people were 30 years ago.
Sure.
In a country, in a culture that is far more expensive. We have a caller. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? And please, what's your language?
My name is Frederick Schultz.
Aha.
Calling from a coastal community. I'm on the banks of the Flint River at the former headquarters, well, I should say former existence of the largest automobile assembly plant in the world.
Yes.
Known as Buick City. And there's nothing here but snow and environmental degradation now.
And you.
He was including himself.
Yes.
Fred, can you hang on just a second?
Sure.
I know this is costing you money, but I have to do this. This is KWMR, 90.5 Point Radio Station, 89.9 Bolinas, 92.3 in San Geronimo Valley. We have a high surf warning in effect from now through 10 p.m. tonight. Big swells coming in. Please do not turn your back to the ocean, and don't be fooled by the long lulls between sets of waves, because they will be coming in at 18 to 22 feet. Oof. And KWMR is supported by Art Rogers Photography in Point Reyes Station, helping the coastal community tell stories since 1973 through portraits of families, babies, groups, marriages, milestones, agriculture, and landscapes, as well as through the Yesterday and Today series, which features family portraits captured over a span of time. More information at 415-663-8345 or at artrogers.com. And Tamales Town Hall, providing a space for town meetings, family gatherings, seminars, and performances since 1874. Online at tamalestownhall.org or at 707-878-2006. That's 707-878-2006. And we're also supported by To Celebrate Life Breast Cancer Foundation, raising funds to help underserved women and men living with breast cancer. Through its Bay Area Breast Cancer Grants program, the foundation supports nonprofits that provide direct and emergency services and believes that no one should face breast cancer alone. Information about how to get involved is available at tocelebratelife.org. Frederick, what have you got to say for yourself?
Not much, but I do have a question for all of you, since you live there in the Point Reyes area.
Yeah.
Because I understand that this show is on money, correct?
Correct.
Well, I guess one question and a comment. The question I have is, you have a local currency there, but you can get down at the Palace Market. I think it's a $2 coin.
$3 coin, yes.
$3 coin, excuse me. I first saw that concept in Small is Beautiful or Buddhist Economics, one of the pieces of writing done by E.F. Schumacher. And the idea with local currencies was, of course, to keep the flow of money, the circular flow of money, inside local communities. I know in your area this is kind of a novelty item. I mean, people buy it as kind of a souvenir at the Palace Market and some of the other locales. But areas that really, really, truly need it, such as a place like Genesee County, is there a way we can go about implementing these local currencies and getting them out circulating throughout the United States to try to keep the outflow of money from going back to centers such as New York or even London? There's some international center as well.
This guy is setting me up, and I don't, also I think he's making fun of my voice. He's mimicking me. But, one of the major ways of doing that is, what products you consume. When you pay your cell phone bill every month, that goes to Wall Street. When you pay your rent, that goes to Stephen Hurwitz. When you pay,
I knew he was going to pick on me. I just knew it.
Oh, you'll have to, I don't know how you'll survive. When you pay your car payment, your insurance payments, all of this money, as caller points out, is leaving the local community and going into basically into Wall Street, into these huge corporations. So the question would be, how do you get those monthly payments for the things that you need to survive to remain in the local economy? I won't belabor it, but one of the ones in energy obviously was community choice aggregation, and that's a law that exists here in California. But you can think of lots of structures that would allow that to happen in terms of the food that we buy and the other services we consume, ways to keep that money from constantly being sucked out of the community. Now, in the case of West Marin, that money goes to Wall Street and then back to the ownership class in West Marin. It comes back to them as dividends and things like that. So for us, it sort of gets recycled, and that does drive up the cost of everything and also the quality of everything. Very wealthy people like to have very nice food.
Right.
And so they're willing to pay a premium.
So the West Marin currency was designed to
for charity, wasn't it?
Aid local nonprofits, and because it's such a beautiful-looking coin, it is a tourist item that they like to take home with them, and that's all part of the plan. You pay $3 for it, and it's worth $1 actually if you spend it in a local store. But
just one comment on what Charles said. It seems today it's about consciousness. It's people make their decision to buy locally, et cetera, because they do feel it's going to benefit the community.
Sure, I think there's a certain myth to it. I mean,
they're not forced to do that.
But I think that the intention seems to me to be a good one. But the way it actually plays out is that, again, places that represent the concentration of global financial wealth and corporate wealth, like West Marin, right, where all the rich people live, or many of them, they can have all of these really high quality local products, blah 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 blah. That hasn't been a model that's really replicable other places. So you look at the agricultural techniques, they're some of the best in the country, perhaps the world, but they can only function if they can get this very, very high price for their product. So the question would be, how do you have a Strauss dairy for every community in the United States? And actually, Albert Strauss and the Strauss people, they do work with, dairy farmers across the United States and internationally. So it's not, I want to say that they're indifferent to this question. But that's the difficult question, is replicating this kind of high-quality stuff in places that, frankly, don't benefit from all of that financial wealth.
Where they can't receive it. The well-known food deserts in certain cities. And we have another caller on the other line. Caller, you're on the air. What's your name, please? And please, what's your language? Hello? Oh, hung up. There you are. Be patient with us, please. So, Fred, did that answer your question?
Yes. The comment I had, if you don't mind, to tie things in politically, since the Democratic Party has absolutely no class awareness, any awareness of how I shouldn't say the other half live, but the other 99% live. I was putting myself through a little torture this morning on the way to work and listening to NPR. And after the segment of supporting endless war and international law, a la the Bush administration, and maintaining a troop presence in Syria, the commentator proceeded to talk about the polls right now in regards to the president. And in fact, the Democrats in by-elections here have at present a 6-point lead, which is not really saying that much, given the fact that the president is so unpopular. However, there was an interesting caveat to that, which is when Trump does not use Twitter, those numbers are almost even. So number one, it says something about how we communicate. But number two, it says when it comes down to it, there's really no program other than this endless babble about Russia that the Democrats can point to in terms of improving the average person's life in this country. And to bring it back locally there to you folks in West Marin, Charles and myself were down at the Western Saloon, and we met a gentleman who was a general contractor in the area, and his father had also been a general contractor in the area. And he said that the wage that was paid to his father's employees back in 81, 82 was exactly the same as it is today.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is more than just millennials. This is affecting, a broad swath of the population.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what that Make America Great Again thing does refer to something about material well-being as well. I mean, it may also be a dog whistle for racists and all the rest of it. But I think to ignore how many people feel as though their quality of life has declined in the last 40 years. And then I guess, like I say, it's intergenerational too. I mean, you have both as a function of giving the marketplace what it wants and as a function of a kind of nostalgic attempt, or not even nostalgia, a kind of sympathetic magic among people my age in a place like West Marin to pretend it's 1975. What they're really saying is, we'd like to buy a house out here, and we can't. We'd like to, be able to do this, and we can't do that. And,
We'd like to live here.
Yeah. And it's so I think it has a big effect on the culture. And by the way, I think it's the same effect. The people with the silly trucker hat for Trump that is reminding them of watching Any Which Way But Loose is the same silly clown with the trucker hat at the Western who wants it to be 1974 in West Marin so they can buy a lot for $40,000 or buy a house.
This is a mischaracterization with the hats.
The hats is an issue?
Trump is promoted by the economic elite.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, it's
not unless they're wearing trucker hats these days.
Well, okay, so this is what I would say is that I was reminded of this, I think it was a Serbian film, I could be wrong, called Underground from about 20 years ago, maybe less than that, maybe more like 15 years ago. And it was a movie in which there is a population which was representing the masses in Yugoslavia during the Cold War who live underground. And they're convinced by the people who live above ground that the Second World War is still going on. And they think the Nazis are going to get them and that they're partisans at war with Nazi invaders. And the people above ground is this group of rich elites that create movies about, with people in Nazi uniforms committing massacres, which they show to the people underground. So when the Democratic Party says Russia, what they're really saying is Rocky IV, we could go back there, or the Cold War, let's do it. They're giving their drugs to their athletes again. Let's go back to the 70s. And the Republicans do a similar thing with these appeals to the past. But to me, I think it's very much what you're saying, Steve. Yeah, they don't wear those hats, but they are producing a kind of pageant and spectacle for the majority of the population to consume that is not going to upset the social order in any profound way. The rich people, equality is not going to increase, but everybody is going to be obsessed by their particular distractions and entertainments and fears.
Do you have anything to add to this conversation?
I'm just, income inequality. Money. The money is all going... Well, now, so here's the thing now. So now the new tax bill gets a big shot in the arm because Apple says they're going to bring $38 billion. They're going to pay $38 billion in taxes that they owe. They have $180 billion overseas somewhere. They're going to come back and they're going to build another headquarters and employ 20,000 people and blah, 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 blah. So there you are. The tax bill worked.
Paul, can I correct you on something, please, if you don't mind? The
Tag team, I like this.
the $180 billion is not overseas. It is titled overseas.
Right.
The companies, but that money is actually in New York City.
Right.
So that's one thing, and I think that's important to note. So if the state would take action on that, those funds could be repatriated quite quickly.
And, of course, it's not cash. It's just
Well, I think the other
digits.
point, well, the point
Apple
about
digits.
the point about shame from the quote that you brought up, Stephen, I thought was interesting. The psychologist, the shame you feel to be poor. You can break yourself of being concerned about those things about your appearance, and I think I'm a fine example of this. And, you know, are you wearing the new thing? Are you taking the fancy? Can you participate in the experience economy the way they want? You can separate yourself from it, but I don't think most people see that they can do it. I think that, in a way, or this system of wage slavery has made us all pretty nihilistic, which is that you're being forced to play a game that you cannot win. But there's no alternative. I mean, this is a kind of, a weird existential trap that people find themselves in. You can work as hard as you like. It's extremely unlikely that you'll ever be able to buy a house. But what's the alternative? There's nothing else you can do. What I could say is you can break yourself of the need to have that material quality of life that means success to you.
You can
but
move
that's
to
awfully
Cleveland.
difficult.
You can move to Cleveland. I mean,
Or Sandusky.
There are parts of the country, and a lot of them, if you're not on the West Coast or the East Coast, that are relatively inexpensive in comparison. It is easier to buy a home. People can actually work from home now. They could have, they could own the home they want. They could keep the same job they have right now.
Maybe.
It really depends on your intention.
To see you up here on the north end of Flint, where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's right. Stevie can move in. No, I mean the problem is you move away from the coast and the wages go down as well, right? So,
not if you're working from home.
Don't confuse a mortgage and rent. They are one and the same. And when you focus on the carrying charges, i.e., interest, there is no difference in those two items.
Right.
Rent is becoming, or mortgage is becoming a kind of a euphemism. It is a rent payment.
Yeah, to the bank.
Being paid to the banks.
Yeah.
Well, I just think also this world of distraction, too. Right? People are distracted. So the distractions maybe in other places are professional sports or we have drugs. We have professional. We sort of do all of them here. But we have, and this is for you, Paul Elmore, you requested upon, we have for the surf. So the little wage slave worker bee drones that buzz around fixing your houses and cleaning and doing things like that, they get to go down to Bolinas now to get and surf.
Yeah,
so
good day for it, too. There's big swells coming in.
663-8492.
Indeed.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on your show. Very interesting topics.
Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you, Fred.
Stay warm up there. Ha, ha, ha.
Oh, dear. I told someone who was in Virginia the other day that it was barely 60 degrees here in California.
Yes, 663-415, 663-8492. Give us a call. How do you feel about money? I have to bank at the only bank in town because no one will put an ATM out here because it wouldn't pay them.
In Sweden, all the ATMs are owned by all the banks in one, so it doesn't matter.
There you go. So Wells Fargo, for example, used to, until they got caught doing other nefarious things, if you started a checking account, they said, oh, well, you should have a savings account as well. It'll say we won't charge you any bank charges for blah, blah, blah. But what you have to do is transfer $25 every month from checking to savings, and you can send it back again to the checking if you like. You can do it. So, you know what happens when that happens? $25 is created out of nothing. This is what our currency is, bank money. $25 is created. Every time that 25 goes from your one account to your other account, that is a deposit, and that is what they had. That's their deposit. That means they're a big bank because they have all these $25 being moved around all the time. Deposit accounts are where most of dollars are, and that's why it's $1.87 trillion, but there's only so much cash. There's only, $10 trillion. No, it's 10 point something trillion dollars, and only 1.3 trillion in actual cash in the world in dollars. So twice a month they're getting $50 new money from nothing, and people say Bitcoin is a come on.
We have a caller.
Anyway, we do have a caller.
Oh boy, the caller has run away again. Caller, call back, and this time
do call back. We'll just pick you up right away.
I know Paul won't stop talking on this show, and so I think it's right. But I was going to say,
Charles Schultz show.
Let's hear Charles talk. It's an excellent show here on KWMR.
God.
Well, the Indian economy, as at the beginning of last year, said they were going to go cashless, right? They were going to force the entire Indian subcontinent to stop using cash in exchange. And those transactions that are now electronic transactions, of course, can get recycled through the financial system. Whereas before, Indians were conducting business with cash, and Wall Street didn't get a cut.
Well, Sweden has
cash.
actually done that. It's very rare that you use cash now, if you read about it.
Well, it's rare here, let's face it. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I rarely use cash. I don't really draw out money anymore out of my account. It's mostly debit and credit. Yes. There is no real money. Well, so a cashless society, how would that look on a local basis? So it would be barter, or it would be a local currency that was created as an actual workable currency that was spent in local businesses and accrued to. But so trading and bartering services, how would we do that?
The multiplier effect actually creates money. I'm paid for my wages. I go and buy meat from the butcher. Butcher buys shoes for his kid. The shoe store buys meat, goes back around to the butcher. From what I understand, it travels 6 times before the money ends, and it ends when you deposit it back in the bank, and it ends, I think, when you buy your product at the a big store, one of the big box stores, because then the money, they don't spend the money. They send that money to China. It goes into profits with which they distribute nationally. But as long as you keep your money in the community, it keeps going around and around. And
it's really difficult to do, though, Stephen. And think about
closed his eyes.
The
shook
owners,
his head like
the owners of maybe the Palace Market or the owners of Marin Sun Farms may see a large portion of that money, but their employees are making an hourly wage, and at that hourly wage, they are part of that third of the county that's struggling financially, and they're making all of their purchases at big box stores. They don't buy their shoes at Cabalane.
Well, forget West Marin. It's very closed.
It's
small
more extreme
example,
in other places.
But take a larger. Well, actually, you're right. The big box stores have learned how to get that money. But in general, if you keep the money going around, if you buy locally, like I said, that is a conscious decision now. You will create wealth in your community.
For a handful of owners. I mean, when you think about when you say the butcher,
that's true.
When you think about the butcher, you're not talking about an individual who owns his or her butcher shop. You're talking about a wage worker, probably making a very low wage.
But it's that wage earner
goes to Costco, probably in Santa Rosa. That's
has to spend their money.
Yeah, not here in the local economy.
That's where the big lie is, that when they give money to people on general assistance, these are people that have to spend their money.
Yeah, but when you're saying about keeping it in a local community, I'm saying that the employees, the businesses out here, by and large, if they're not the owner, are living
not living here,
living here, and are not spending their money, their meager wage, compared to how much owners or the wealthy have.
A lot of it goes to Chevron or
some big box store someplace
for driving here.
Yeah, and where do most of the even
yes,
with all
it's true. We're stuck.
We're not stuck, but it's a more complex problem. It's a more complex problem.
You're right. It's complex.
And I think that it's trapped in a lot of things that would be very difficult to unwind. And one of them is that how do you increase wages? How do you get people paid more to do what they do? Right. Or how do you deal with the fact that the housing prices are so far out of reach that you would have to give people 10 times the wage that they're getting to be able to own a Marin starter home? It's a big climb. I think it means there's a role for local government, and I think the fact that we basically have no local government in West Marin means that there's very little that you can do in order to deal with that problem.
So would making it an actual town, what do you call it?
A municipality, yeah. To
Municipality, if you were incorporated.
To tax it. Because, the economy of West Marin...
Would that change things?
The economy of West Marin has nothing to do with being a forest gnome or spirit or nature. It has to do with tourism. And you need to grab some of that tourism money. How would you do that? Well, become an entity that can impose taxes. And the way to do that is become a municipality.
Well, so Dennis Rodoni is going to give a little cut of the transient occupancy tax to it'll be put in the kitty for West Marin or for So that's
for
a
local
that's
housing.
A
I
start.
hope it is a start.
Nice little start.
But
I
think
cash this way, keep it here.
I think it's a very, very small, very, very modest step. Not as modest as Jonathan Swift would have it, though. If we could do that. If we could simply eat the young, then we'd have no problem at all. Sorry. No, that is a very modest local tax, but that would be the idea, which is how do you retain the wealth here? How do you grab it from all these people that are constantly moving in and out of the community, taxing the community essentially by their presence? Good for the local businesses.
But then, of course, that makes life here even more expensive for those, it would make it even more expensive to live here because you'd have local taxes to pay as well as...
Well, you're missing one big factor. Mm-hmm. It's going to trickle down.
Well, the local tax.
I feel some trickling through the ceiling right
now. If only that worked.
If only that was so.
I think you could find forms of taxation that aren't regressive, that aren't going to disproportionately hit the low-income workers. But it would be a big thing to do. Because the tourist economy and this economy of displacement, it's kind of become a global phenomenon. They say 1 in 11 jobs is related to tourism today.
Wow.
It is difficult.
The rest are service jobs, really.
Yeah, well, service, and, I think when they're including that number of tourist jobs are the service jobs that support the restaurants, say here in Point Reyes, are not supported by local business. If there was only local residents dining there wouldn't be any restaurants.
You want to keep things confined to our local. And I think this is not typical. I would say the Bay Area, okay, talk about that instead. It's much bigger sample.
Tourists, well, no, but you can set the boundary wherever you want. It's a global phenomenon, tourism. I'm saying this is happening everywhere. And so the control of the local, of constituting some kind of local we that could get together and deal with these problems, very difficult to do. You have huge turnover in terms of the population. Your long-term residents, many of them are just not interested in dealing with any of these questions. You've got a lot of retirees that just don't care. And I don't blame them. Maybe it's not the stage of life to be taking on problems like this. It's a difficult question of how you would increase the wealth of the local to make sure people had more security and more money and more whatever.
Right.
Anyway.
Cash is king. And... have we really explored the subject of what currency is? I don't know. It's an interesting little problem that we all, everyone works or everyone has cash, and what does it actually mean?
Well, you were saying that
when the value can be taken away.
You don't have cash. You said
you have digital. You have little numbers in a ledger somewhere. Yes, exactly. And one good blast in the air. What do you call it? An electromagnetic blast, and that's all wiped out. Oh dear. Anyway, it's a tenuous thing. Currency. Money is a tenuous, and it's based on trust and very little else these days. Anyway, sorry. Sorry about that. KWMR does not take a stand on any of the issues discussed on Let's Talk. Opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers and don't necessarily reflect the views of KWMR, its board of directors, underwriters, or members. Thank you for being here in the studio today. Stephen, Shelley, Charles.
Thank you all.
And thank you to our caller, Frederick, and the other caller who was trying to get in and lost patience. And thanks to everyone. Yeah, they had to go back to work. Yeah. Exactly. And thanks to everyone listening in your lunch hour.